All right, can you feel that? We got excitement today. You know why? Because football season's finally here. Tonight, we'll see the Kansas City Chiefs hosting the Detroit Lions, and man, I cannot wait for some football action. So why don't we just go ahead and jump into this video. This is going to be your start sits based on our opinions for the wide receivers and quarterbacks. Starting off here on Thursday Night Football, Detroit Lions, only one guy I'm going to be able to say confidently you could throw in your lineup and start him, and that's Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm sitting Josh Reynolds and I'm sitting Marvin Jones. Those guys, they're decent backups, but not somebody that is fantasy viable right out the gate. Unless something changes over the next couple weeks, I would keep looking at this to be the similar or the normal for the Detroit Lions. Kansas City, on the other hand, Kadarius Toney, starting him. Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Sky Moore. Now, news just broke today. Travis Kelce hyperextended his knee. We'll get into that with the tight end ones later. But for now, if Kelce, for whatever reason, does not play, you're starting MVS. Marquez Valdes-Scantling will be a starter for me if Kelce cannot play. So keep that in mind. I'm not ready to see a little bit of Sky Moore. I know they also got Rashad Rice or whatever. For me, he's just somebody that I'm not willing to just throw in my lineups and start until I see a little bit more. That being said, let's move on to the next matchup here. Sunday at 1 o'clock. These are the early slated games. Bengals, Browns. I'm starting Jamar Chase, and I'm starting T. Higgins. Those guys are going to be fantasy viable in probably about 90 to 100% of their matchups every single week. I mean, there's not going to be a reason for me to really sit them unless of something drastic or somebody that I know that they struggle up against. Tyler Boyd, though, on the other hand, I'm going to sit him. In the past, he's had good games against Cleveland. However, we already know Chase and Higgins are going to take 90% of the load when it comes to receiving work. So I'm going to sit Tyler Boyd this week. On the other side of the ball, I'm going to put the Browns in here. Amari Cooper is going to be my only start. Yes, I know there has been talks out of camp. Elijah Moore and Deshaun Watson have a connection. But that's preseason. That's training camp. I need to see them in a real-life game before I can throw them over. And Donovan Peoples-Jones did have 6 games with them last year. Wasn't really targeted all that much by Deshaun Watson. So for that, Amari Cooper is my only start there. Moving on, we got Texans at Baltimore next. Nico Collins is going to be a start for me. The only reason I am starting Nico Collins out of this group and I'm sitting Robert Woods and Noah Brown is because Nico Collins has had that connection since day one with C.J. Stroud. I expect Baltimore to be ahead early. I expect this to be a huge blowout. In all honesty, maybe we get surprised with C.J. Stroud, but other than that, Nico Collins is going to be a guy he's going to target a lot. So if you target him at least 10 times a game, he's probably bringing in 5 to 6, and then the yardage on top of that might even get a touchdown. Who knows? So for that, Nico Collins is going to be my start on that side. Going to Baltimore side, Rashad Bateman's going to be the only start for me. Odell Beckham coming off and that knee injury last year again, just not having it 2 years ago. I just don't know how this is going to play out. I don't. Until I see a little bit more of connection. Yes, again, same thing with the Brown side. You have the preseason. You have the training camp. I need to see more before I can throw him in there. And then Zay Flowers being the number 3 guy. He might get some targets, but not enough for me to throw him in even at flex for week 1. Moving on, we got Tampa Bay at Minnesota. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, before anybody says it. Yes, Baker Mayfield is their quarterback. But in the similar situation with the Texans and the Ravens, I expect this to be a blowout, or if not a blowout, something where they're going to have to throw a lot in Tampa Bay in this matchup. So Mike Evans and Chris Godwin for me are going to be starts. I'm going to sit Trey Palmer. That's a no-brainer right there for right now. On the other side of the ball, I'm going to start Justin Jefferson. He's a lock. Unless something happens, he's a lock. You can count that going forward. Go ahead and lock that in here. But I'm also going to start Jordan Addison. Why? Dude's just a freak. Okay? We haven't seen him in the NFL yet. But in college, he was an absolute freak. And I expect that to translate over. Maybe not this year. But look out. He could. You never know. But Jordan Addison, to me, is going to be the guy getting most of the secondary looks. He's explosive. He's good with the ball. Good with catching, 50-50. He's going to take that. So with that being said, I am going to sit KJ Osborne. Yes, he might be listed number 2 on the depth chart, but to me, he's the number 3 receiver. Going on, this is a matchup that I don't even care about putting on the TV. If every other game was canceled, I would not put this game on the TV regardless. And that's going to be Carolina and Atlanta. However, that being said, if you do have a guy like Adam Thielen on your team or even Drake London, I would throw them in there as maybe a flex start. I'm not dying to put them in there, but if they're your third best receiver and you don't have a good secondary or third or fourth string running back on your team, this is going to be somebody that I'm going to put in at my flex if I have to. I expect the quarterbacks to be throwing a little bit more than most people expect, maybe 25, 30 passes this game. They're going to have to get in the rhythm, and what better way to do it than what I would consider the garbage bowl? But hey, that's just my thought. So Adam Thielen and Drake London are starts. You can sit the rest of these guys. DJ Chark, I need to see a little bit more for him with Bryce Young. Jonathan Mingo, same thing. And then on the other side, Scotty Miller and Matt Collins. I got to see more before I put those guys in the start category. Moving on here, we got the Cardinals at Washington playing the Commanders. And yeah, no Kyler Murray to start the season. Might not even see him at all this season based on some reports. So we're going to go ahead and sit every single one of these receivers. Joshua Dobbs is going to be their starting quarterback from all reports that I've been seeing. So on that note, just sit everyone. Until we see more for sure usage and volume from these guys, I'm sitting them. The only start for me as of right now is going to be John Dotson. Terry McLaurin is a little banged up. Curtis Samuel, he's not really somebody that Sam Howell is going to look to right away. Now, if McLaurin is out, expect Samuel to step into that number 2 role. Maybe be a low-end flex. If you have a 12-team league and you play 2 flexes or 3 flexes, maybe you throw him in there if you need to. But other than that, Jahan Dotson is going to be the only start for me. Moving on to a great matchup for these two teams, in my opinion, because they're going to be throwing the ball. Whether they're up, whether they're down, they're going to be throwing the ball. And that's what you expect especially from Jacksonville. Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley, they're going to be automatic starts for me right now in this week. There's no doubt about it. If you have them, they are in your lineup. Unless you have a receiving core of A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, somebody of that nature in those 3 spots, if you're playing 2 receivers in a flex, these guys got to be in your lineup. Zay Jones for me is going to be a sit for right now. I expect Ridley to get the secondary or first look. I kind of look at Christian Kirk and Ridley as they 1A, 1B when it comes to looks that Trevor Lawrence is going to go to. Other side of the ball, Anthony Richardson is going to have to throw it a lot, I expect, in this game, just because no Jonathan Taylor. You got Deion Jackson as their starting running back this week. And that being said, he's going to probably end up being down a lot. So expect him to at least, he's got a decent arm on him. Accuracy's a little shaky, but he's got an arm. And we all know Michael Pittman's fast. So could see him break loose once or twice, get some good plays, yardage, and that's what we need in fantasy football to stay relevant. Going to another 1 o'clock game here. Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel as the 49ers take on the Steelers. I'm starting both of them. Brock Purdy. Loved what I've seen from Brock Purdy last year. There's no doubt about it. Love what I've seen from it. These guys got targeted when he was in there. No more Trey Lance. So as long as Brock Purdy's out there, these guys are starting with me unless if there's a dominant matchup. Pittsburgh's defense is good, but not good in the secondary. From the last 2 years to now, I'm taking Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. I'm going to sit Juwan Jenkins. We're not even going to worry about that. He's a 5th or 6th guy on the list right now. I'm not even worried about that. Going over the other side of the ball, like I said in the rankings videos, get used to hearing Pickett to Pickens because that's going to be a connection we're going to see all year. Deontay Johnson, I expect more touchdowns from him this year, but he also gets targets as well. So these guys, with the amount of targets that they're going to get in this game, I'm going to start them. Allen Robinson, I'm going to go ahead and sit him. Moving on to the last 1 o'clock game that we have on the early side of this, DeAndre Hopkins, I'm going to go ahead and start him. Again, something where they're going to be throwing a lot at the end. You might even see a Will Levis or a Malik Willis come in if Tannehill isn't doing the job. And this is kind of like a throwaway thing. So we'll see what ends up happening. In my opinion, I'm going to go ahead and DeAndre Hopkins is going to be a start for me. Traylon Burks, not quite there yet. And Westbrook, I'm going to go ahead and sit him as well. Saints side, I'm going to go ahead and start Chris Olave and Michael Thomas. 2 reasons on this. They are both quick. They are both elusive. If you cut across the middle and hit them, they're going to go ahead and hit that burner, and they're gone. Not necessarily to the end zone, but they'll go for maybe another 10 to 15, 20 yards after the catch. And that's what we love. We love to see Yak in fantasy football. Yards after catch is a must. And Chris Olave and Michael Thomas now have a guy who can throw it deep in Derek Carr. Shaheed is going to be questionable in this game as of right now of this recording, so I'm going to go ahead and sit him. Moving on to our later slate games. Now you have the Raiders at the Broncos. Jimmy Garoppolo is the starting quarterback for the Raiders. But you can't sit Devontae Adams. You can't. You can't. Unless he puts up 3 points in fantasy football because Jimmy G's the quarterback for 2 or 3 straight weeks, I'm not sitting Devontae Adams. Jacoby Myers and Hunter Renfrow, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and sit them. I'm going to hold off on them. Other side of the ball, no Jerry Jeudy, at least what it sounds like for a couple weeks. He is questionable. Marvin Mims is going to step up in that secondary role. I don't know what to expect from him in the first week. Maybe he shows us he needs to be a starter next week. But until then, Cortland Sutton's going to be my only start in this matchup against the Raiders. Moving on now, we got the New England Patriots hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. And you already know, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, they got to be starts. Unless one of them completely shits the bed, I am starting those two almost every single week. I do like the matchup. Secondary is not as good as it used to be in New England, so expect them to get their fantasy viable points. Quez Watkins is questionable as well, so I'm going to go ahead and sit him. I don't expect him to get a lot of targets. You do have Dallas Goedert there as well, but him, I just don't think he's going to get that many targets as well in this matchup. On the other end, you got Juju Smith-Schuster starting for New England. Devontae Parker's questionable, a little banged up. He's probably going to end up playing in this game, but I don't expect him to get, 6 to 7 targets in this game. I expect him to be more of just a space filler for week 1. They're not going to overload him or overwork him. They're going to make sure he comes back healthy for later on in the season. Kendrick Bourne's also going to be a sit for me in this one, so make sure Juju Smith-Schuster, if you need to, he's definitely a flex play for me this week, put him in. Going on now, we got L.A. Rams. And Cooper Kupp is not going to be playing week 1 from all reports. That being said, if he does play, I still don't feel comfortable playing him. Van Jefferson is probably going to be the only guy I would end up starting even if Cooper Kupp does play. Because Van Jefferson is going to step into that number 1 role, and that's what they need. On the other side of the ball, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Got to start him. Geno Smith had that connection last year. I don't know if it's going to 100% connect this year like it did last year. Maybe it was luck. Or maybe Geno's finally becoming Geno. And if Geno Smith becomes Geno Smith that we expected out of college, man, these guys are going to be in for a great season. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett are locks for me. Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be questionable, and it sounds like he's out for 5 weeks. So until he comes back and we see a little bit from him, he's going to be a sit going forward. That being said, go on to the next game. That's going to be the Miami Dolphins at the LA Chargers. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, I'm starting them as long as Tua is in there. For week 1, I'm going to go ahead and start them. That connection is just deadly. And the same thing we talked about a couple matchups ago, Yak. You need A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, Chris Olave and Michael Thomas. They get those plays, and those are the plays that you need to have fantasy viable options. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, 2-yard dump off. They can make it a 20, 30-yard, even a touchdown if they needed to. Cedric Wilson Jr. is going to be a sit for me on that end, so watch out for that one as he will probably be a sit for most of the season. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams is going to be a start for me in this one as well. This is going to be a high-powered offense for both teams. I expect throwing. Nothing but passes, couple runs here and there, but mostly throwing. So get ready for these passes and get ready for those numbers to go up. Joshua Palmer is going to be a sit for me in this matchup as well for the Chargers. Going on to the last late slate game, what's going to be Christian Watson for Green Bay as an only start for me. Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed are going to be sits until I see a little bit more. This is supposed to be the Jordan Love era. Let's see what happens. Move from there. Chicago side of the ball, I'm starting DJ Moore and I'm starting Darnell Mooney. A lot of people forget Mooney and Fields had that connection from day 1. And that being said, with Mooney coming back after a whole offseason of getting healthy, I expect that connection to be there. Now, if I'm going to put one in at 100%, it's going to be DJ Moore. But if you need to start Darnell Mooney because you have him and don't have a better play, make sure you put him in at flex or receiver. Chase Claypool is going to be a questionable as well for this game, so he's going to be a sit. Moving on to Sunday Night Football here, as we got the last two games coming up. CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks are going to be starts for me. Brandon Cooks did his thing with David Mills in Texans territory. So with that being said, now that he's got Dak Prescott, and this is a team that throws for 50 times a game, usually in that range of 40 to 50, I'm going to start both these guys. Michael Gallup, I'm going to sit. Good 2 years ago. This year, past season, I just... something about it is not there for me. So until I see more from Michael Gallup, he's going to be a sit. Now, that being said, on the Giants side of the offense, I'm going to go ahead and start Darius Slayton, but I'm going to sit Hodges and Campbell. The only reason I have this in mind is Slayton and Daniel Jones had that connection early. So expect that to start off early again. I expect Hodges to be more fantasy viable as the season progresses. As of right now, though, I'm going to stick with Darius Slayton. And on to our final matchup for receivers here. You already know Stephon Diggs is going to be a start unless something happens. So Stephon Diggs is going to be a lock for me going forward. Again, until I see a terrible matchup for him, which I don't think Buffalo is going to have too many terrible matchups for these guys. I'm going to go ahead and start him. Gabe Davis as well is going to be a start for me. Don't sleep on Gabe Davis. Khalil Shakir is going to be a sit for me. And then on the opposite side of this, the New York Jets, my only start is going to be Garrett Wilson. Allen Lazard's coming in with a questionable mark on his injury status. That's going to be iffy, especially when you got a Monday night. You don't want to wait too late. And then Randall Cobb for me is also going to be a sit. And that's going to end up doing it for our wide receiver portion. So if you have any questions, go ahead and drop it in the comments. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. Try to get to you within an hour max. But other than that, you got the receivers. Now let's find the connections for them. Let's go to the quarterback side of it. And we'll start off with Thursday Night Football. Patrick Mahomes, go ahead and lock it in. That's going to be a start for me. Jared Goff on this week, I am going to sit. There is not much more I can say on that. I expect this to be Chiefs all day long. Next game we're going to talk about is the Browns and Bengals. Joey B is questionable, but multiple reports are saying he's probably going to end up playing in this game. And why wouldn't you if you feel at least 90-95%? Now, if it's anything below that, like Jamar Chase said, he wants a healthy Joe Burrow. If he has to sit out week one, he said he'll take it. Now, Bengals fans, they probably don't want to hear that. And I agree. However, I'd rather take a full season of a healthy quarterback than a full season of 80% Joe Burrow. And that's saying not a whole lot either, because Joe Burrow at 80% is still good, but he's not as deadly as we've seen him like he got to the champion when he went to the Super Bowl a couple of years back. Sean Watson for me is going to be a start as well. That feeling, he's back. We've seen a couple throws. We've seen a couple plays. He just looked good against the Chiefs in that final preseason game. Not enough for me to say he's going to be an automatic lock every week, but this week against the Bengals and the Browns and how they play against them, go ahead and put him in your starting lineups. Moving on to the next one, CJ Stroud is going to be a sit for me. He's going to throw a lot, but that also opens him up to a lot of interceptions, especially as a young quarterback going up against a good secondary that the Ravens have. I expect one, maybe even two picks. If he doesn't do any interceptions, though, in this game, he doesn't throw any, that's a plus, and we'll keep that in mind moving forward. But as of right now, CJ Stroud's a sit. And on the other side of the ball, Lamar Jackson's going to be a start. This is not only a heavy passing opportunity for Lamar to show his arm again, but it's also a good rushing opportunity if he needs to rush it. I don't expect the Texans to have that good of a defense this year, and this matchup right here is going to be exposing that. Going on to the next one, like I said in the receiver portion, I'm starting Mike Evans and Chris Godwin because they're going to throw a lot. Expect the volume for the receivers to be up, but the quarterbacks, that puts them a little bit more in risky territory, and that's where Baker Mayfield is. I'm going to sit him. for week 1 against the Vikings. And on the other side, Kirk Cousins. I'm going to go ahead and start him. I love the matchup for Kirk Cousins. That being said, going on to the next one, Carolina and the Falcons. I'm going to sit Bryce Young and Desmond Ridder until I see more. I cannot start them. But if I had to put one in there, for whatever reason, if you have Joey B and he doesn't end up playing and you have one of these guys, I would probably start Ridder more than Bryce Young. But if you got to throw him in there, you got to throw him in there. If you can, though, maybe play the waiver wire, see if you can get a free ad. Going to the next game, it's going to be the Cardinals and Commanders. Like I said, I'm not starting any receivers. I'm going to do the same thing here. Washington's got a good front defense, good secondary, and I'm not playing Joshua Dobbs. It's not happening. Until I see something from him, it's not happening. Sam Howell, on the other hand, I'm going to go ahead and start him. I like the opportunity. Cardinals have traded away a couple of their players, lost some guys in free agency on defense, so this is going to be a good matchup for Sam Howell. If you have him, you might want to play him. Other side of the ball, next matchup, Trevor Lawrence, Anthony Richardson. One of the best quarterbacks last year, and I expect that to transfer over this year. He's going to be a start for me. Anthony Richardson, not yet. I love the hype on this kid. I've seen some of the plays he's done in preseason. He's looked a little shaky in some. Like we said, the accuracy was going to be an issue. But man, does he look good when he can throw that ball deep and make that connection. That's going to be explosive if he can get that accuracy under control. San Francisco and the Steelers, both really good defense. I'm not starting either one of these guys. Now, if you absolutely had one of these guys, and these were one of the guys that you had as a starting quarterback, and this was what you got in the later rounds, and you waited on that quarterback, I don't know what to tell you because I don't like it. I expect a lot of sacks. I expect this to be a low-scoring game. But with that being said, yes, I started Ayuk, yes, I started Debo, and yes, I started Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. The volume's going to be there. And if you're in a PPR league, they're automatic starts because they're going to get 4, 5, 6 catches and probably end up anywhere between 70 yards or more. Probably all of them. So expect that. But other than that, for quarterback-wise, I'm going to go ahead and sit them. Next matchup, Titans and Saints. I'm going to go ahead and sit Ryan Tannehill. Again, he's going to throw probably a good amount, but he doesn't have a lot of weapons except for DeAndre Hopkins. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and sit him. I don't expect much from him this week. Saints side of the ball, Derek Carr. I love the yard after catch opportunity for Michael Thomas and Chris Olave. Plus, he can throw the ball deep. And let's not forget, Derek Carr has had some wheels in the past. Not super fast, but enough to get you some rushing upside on that as well. So on that play, I'm going to go ahead and put Derek Carr in my lineup if I have him. Next matchup is going to be the Raiders and Broncos. Earlier I stated it. I don't know what the Raiders are doing. They let go of Stidham, who is now the backup to Russell Wilson, by the way. And they signed Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, the only plus side for this is that he does get Josh McDaniels back, his old offensive coordinator in New England. So that being said, maybe this will work out, but as of right now, he's going to be a sit for me, especially against that stingy secondary from the Broncos. Russell Wilson, on the other hand, is going to be a start for me. Sean Payton is going to be in his headset talking to Russell Wilson, and if we know anything about Sean Payton, he can turn quarterbacks that were all right or great and slow down a little bit into better quarterbacks. We've seen it with Drew Brees. Eagles and Patriots. Jalen Hurts coming off of his Super Bowl season, an MVP season last year. Can he top it again? I don't think he'll top it, but he'll be pretty darn close. And for that reason, I expect this to be a good matchup. Jalen Hurts is going to be a start for me. Mac Jones, on the other hand, will be a sit. I just do not like with the secondary and defensive front of the Eagles. It's going to be a tough matchup. LA Rams at Seattle playing the Seahawks. Matt Stafford for me will be a sit, especially with no Cooper Kupp. Geno Smith, on the other hand, is going to be a start. That secondary for the Rams is looking pretty easy pickings for Geno Smith if he can turn into the same player he was last year, if not even better. So expect that to be a high volume for Geno Smith there in that matchup. I'm going to put him in as a start if you have him at quarterback. And this is my must-watch game of the week. when it comes to quarterbacks. Tua and Justin Herbert. Stated earlier, same thing. 40 to 50 passing opportunities probably per team. I expect this to be a you get a touchdown, you get a touchdown, you get a touchdown type of game. I could be wrong, but this is something where I think these two are going to be high-scoring fantasy viable players in Week 1. Packers at the Bears. I'm going to sit Jordan Love. I know the hype behind it. He had 2 years to develop, but I got to see what he does first. He looked good in preseason, I'll give you that. But I got to see exactly what he can do. And moving forward, maybe I'll throw him in the start category, but for Week 1, I'm going to sit him. Justin Fields, like I stated earlier with Derek Carr, he has that rushing possibility. Justin Fields has that rushing upside. You are going to get rushing and passing from both of those from Justin Fields. So expect that to be a big plus if you have Justin Fields and that was your first quarterback off the board. Kudos to you because you just got a dual threat quarterback. Sunday Night Football, this ends it on Sunday. Giants hosting the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to go ahead and start Dak Prescott, but I am going to sit Daniel Jones. I like the weapons that Dallas has. They always find a way to hit their targets and score points. But Daniel Jones, after that massive contract, is he going to fall into a slump or is he going to somehow turn into the Daniel Jones he was going against the Vikings in the playoffs? That will be known in a couple days here. But for right now, Daniel Jones is going to be a sit for me. And on the last matchup of the night, or of the slate, it's going to be Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers, both as starts for me. Aaron Rodgers is going to put up a good amount of points for fantasy-wise, and Josh Allen is going to be the second-best quarterback coming into most people's draft. So that being said, I expect Josh Allen to have a really good night. Both these guys are going to be starts for me. And that's going to do it for our start sits for wide receiver and quarterbacks. If you disagree with anything, drop it in the comments. We'll talk about it. I'm willing to have a debate with you guys. Let me know where you think I might be off, but on our end, these are what I predict coming into Week 1. Other than that, you already know what's going on. It's Play Action Fantasy Football. Make sure you drop a like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you hit that notification bell. Make sure you get that notification as soon as our videos drop. 3 days a week, our videos will drop. Rankings Tuesday, Wednesday. And you'll get to start sits on Wednesday, right in time for fantasy football action. Other than that, you guys take care. We'll see you next week.